Last year, to mark the 175th anniversary of the Sisters of Charity in Australia, the Foundation decided to embark on a legacy project that would provide a real and lasting benefit to a group of people who are some of the most disadvantaged living amongst us. Every year, thousands of asylum seekers seek refuge in Australia. Most arrive with nothing, know no one, and are deeply traumatised by the circumstances of their displacement. And their personal tragedies are compounded by the complex policy and political issues they face when they arrive here. The vast majority are unable to access any form of government support. Around half have no work rights, no means to meet their most basic human requirements. Access to safe and secure housing is perhaps the most immediate issue they face. I cannot imagine what it must be like to start a new life in a new country, possibly without knowing English and without having housing for oneself and one's family. So after consultation with Gary Moore, who I'm very pleased is here tonight, the then CEO of Homelessness New South Wales, the Sisters of Charity approached the Asylum Seekers Centre with what they hoped was an offer of practical support. The offer went something like this: can we supply you with a residential property to house your clients who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless, while you provide them with intensive case management? I think you know what the answer was. But agreeing to work together was in some way the easy part. Next, we had to identify a suitable property. And for those who have gone through the rigour of trying to find a property, it isn't easy. And we had certain requirements, obviously, to meet. And we went to several auctions, and we weren't the top bidder at those auctions, and we were terribly disappointed. And then we found the place that I think was the most appropriate place. And Reba was there at the auction bidding. I was at the end of the phone wondering how much more money I was going to spend. And we obtained the property, and I must say we are delighted with the property. Since buying the property, which consists of 4 separate dwellings, we then refurbished it. It certainly wasn't in the order that one could offer to people who have already gone through much trauma. And so we've refurbished the property, and I think it's in a very, very respectable state now. And I'm pleased to say, just as an aside, that I understand the first new occupants of the property start next week. Is that correct? It's a couple with a young boy, so I think that's lovely. When it became apparent that there was light at the end of the tunnel with regard to the building works, etc., we then reflected on how best to, I guess, acknowledge the contribution of the Sisters of Charity, not because they wanted it, but we thought it was an appropriate thing to do. We were inspired to embark upon the project as a practical way of reflecting their social justice legacy. And so after considerable reflection and consultation with the sisters, we decided to call the property Providence House. Divine providence is a difficult thing to define, and I shan't try to do it here. It not only covers God's relationship with us, but it also raises the concept of our freedom as humans. Perhaps a way to partly understand it is if we consider that the greatest gifts we can be given are life and freedom, and with that comes a responsibility to use all we have been given in the service of those who have so little. This gives us some insight into Mary Aikenhead's driving force when she began the Sisters of Charity in 1815. Mary Aikenhead believed that relying on divine providence, the sisters would be able to fulfil their 4th vow of practical service to the poor. For 200 years now, the Sisters of Charity, through prayer, discernment and action, have experienced God's providence, guiding and enabling them to ensure that all in need have for love what the rich have for money. The Sisters of Charity of Australia are well known for St Vincent's healthcare and the fine education offered at the schools they conduct. In these institutions and many other ministries, their love for the poor and marginalised and their commitment to social justice has truly enriched our nation. The Sisters of Charity Foundation was established by the nuns to carry on the social justice work of the sisters in perpetuity, to work cooperatively and creatively within the community to bring relief to those who need it most. We strive to fulfil that mission through our community grants program, our tertiary scholarship program, and now, thanks to the partnership with the Asylum Seekers Centre, by providing relief to asylum seekers who are some of the most disadvantaged people living amongst us. Thankfully, most of us will never know the pain of having to flee our homeland and never seeing our loved ones again. We push such thoughts to the darkest reaches of our mind and pray we are spared such unbearable grief. But sadly, it is a reality for thousands of people arriving in Australia who are escaping religious and political persecution. Many have seen unthinkable violence and death. Some have experienced torture. They have nothing, know no one, and rely on well-run, compassionate charities and non-government organisations for assistance and to meet their basic needs. With the expertise and compassion of the Asylum Seekers Centre, Providence House will now be a safe place where a great many people will be guided and encouraged to rebuild their lives. On behalf of the Sisters of Charity, I would like to thank the Asylum Seekers Centre for the partnership we have established and working with us so wholeheartedly to realise our vision.
My personal story is I became involved with the Asylum Seekers Centre about 3 or 4 years ago. The reason I became involved was that I feel I've led a very fortunate life, and so much of my good fortune has been determined by where I was born and where I was brought up. It's not really been about me. And there are so many people who are fleeing terrible circumstances whose own fortune or lack of fortune is purely determined by the circumstances of their birth and where they come up. And that seems to me to be inherently unfair. So if we're able to contribute in some way to evening out that unfairness, that's something I'd like to be part of. And certainly what we're doing today and what we've been able to do with the Sisters of Charity is to help even out some of that unfairness that's inherent in the world. So the Asylum Seekers Centre has been around for 21 years. I think it's 155 or 6 less than the Sisters. So we've got a long way to go. But our focus has always been on practical support for asylum seekers living in the community. We don't aim to make judgments, we just aim to do our best to look after people who have fled often the most appalling circumstances, that some of those that Richard talked about. We do know that asylum seekers are some of the most disadvantaged people in Australia and really have very limited access to many services. But a consistent theme across that 20 years, and unfortunately I suspect across the next 20 years, has been homelessness. And when we started working with the Sisters of Charity, at that time 50% of the asylum seekers who showed up at our door were homeless or about to be homeless, and that's now risen to 80%. So I personally reflect on this a bit. I've never been homeless. I think, Richard, you might have said you'd never been homeless. I suspect most people in this room have never been homeless. And I find it bewildering that in a country as wealthy as Australia, we permit that to happen, and yet we do. So if we can make our own small step to improving that, I think that's a huge step forward. So you can just imagine the delight on all our faces when we were approached by the sisters to say, could we find a way to help jointly celebrate the 175th anniversary? Well, we thought we could. We've worked really well together ever since. As Richard said, we had a number of properties that we didn't manage to get across the line, but that's the nature of it with property. But once we've secured it and then improved it, we've ended up with a dwelling that will make an enormous difference to the initial lives of some people arriving in Australia, and hopefully we can show them a much warmer welcome than they're getting from, well, certainly some aspects of government. And we're also delighted that the Sisters have granted us a 15-year lease on the property. And I think the long-term nature of this relationship is so important. And from the Asylum Seekers Centre point of view, we're really determined to work well with the Sisters of Charity over the life of this agreement. And we hope it will go on almost indefinitely, frankly. But I certainly am very confident from the way that we've worked together so far that this will be a very effective, strong, long-term relationship that will make a big difference to some of the most disadvantaged people in our community.
Over the last year alone, the Asylum Seekers Centre has been incredibly privileged to serve over 1,400 people, all of whom who have fled persecution and who've come to Australia seeking asylum. All of them are people who have an individual, unique story. All of their pain is personal to them. But through all of their stories is an incredible thread of courage, the courage to not only survive, but to also go on and persevere and rebuild their lives. At the Asylum Seekers Centre, our vision is very simple, is that asylum seekers are welcomed and given a chance to heal in safety and freedom while they rebuild their lives to become worthy members of our community. And yet we find that when the clients arrive at our centre, that 80% of them at the moment are homeless or about to become homeless. 80% of them receive no form of government support. 1 in 3 doesn't even have access to Medicare. And so through the centre we provide practical and personal care to asylum seekers. But by far the most urgent and pressing need, as Richard said in his speech, is a need to get a roof over people's heads. To get a roof over your head, to feel secure and safe, is a first step to going towards being able to heal from your experiences and to go on and start to rebuild your life. We're incredibly fortunate that a bit over a year ago, Gary Moore, who's here, introduced Reba and I, got us together to talk about the project Providence House. We are here today because of the incredible generosity, the incredible vision and insight of the Sisters of Charity and the board of the Sisters of Charity Foundation. I'd like to thank all of them from the bottom of my heart for making Providence House available to all of our clients. Over the coming years, hundreds and hundreds of people's lives will be touched by Providence House. They'll get the safety, the security, the serenity. When you walk through the different apartments in Providence House, there is a peacefulness there that will allow people to heal, to recover, and to go on to rebuild their lives, to be part of our community.
The idea for this exhibition was forming over a number of years. I'm not quite sure exactly when, and I was thinking about the fact that we never get to see asylum seekers or hear any of their stories. I believe has allowed them to be treated as statistics and not as people. And I think that that has stopped a lot of Australians thinking of these people, asylum seekers, with the compassion and understanding that they would have had if they knew something about them, even just a few of them. And so I was trying to think what I could do, and we never see photos of them. And then I realised that there is a way around photography for a start, and that is drawing. And it's interesting that something that is so old-fashioned could still be used in a way that is, you could almost say, subversive, that you're actually getting around this thing. But I had no idea how to go about this, and through a friend, I was very lucky that I was given a list including the Asylum Seekers Centre, and I'm so glad that I contacted them. And I received a response immediately saying yes, which was fantastic. And one of the things that I've said to a few people tonight, which is really wonderful, and I didn't expect, is that everyone understands what it's all about straight away, which is terrific. I mean, it's a simple idea. It's, who are these people? Well, this is who they are. They're really they could be anyone, but they're all different types. They're people from anywhere, and here's a little bit about them. So it's pretty straight. It's like introducing you to them, and it's also deliberately, well, it is not a political thing. It's just a thing about people, and all of that cuts through so many things, and I think the simplicity of it was really the main idea. So I was working at the Asylum Seekers Centre drawing these. All of them took between 2 and 3 hours. They're drawn entirely from life. They're drawn in chalk pastels, which are those chalks that you can see in that case over there. It's a very immediate kind of medium. First of all, I had imagined, though, that I was going to be working in black and white. I had this idea that I would use charcoal. And then my first model arrived, because we did get a few volunteers first of all, and then when they saw what it was, we got tons, in fact more than we could take. But my first model arrived, who was this very beautiful woman wearing a stunning yellow and red sari, and I thought, I cannot draw that in black and white. That would be ridiculous. And that's good, because even if people aren't wearing something as flamboyant as that, like this man, it just makes it more real and more coloured and more alive. So I was grateful that my first person stopped me from even thinking about black and white. The Asylum Seekers Centre is a place that current clients, but also people who have gone through previously, know and trust. So they already knew that if this was something that the Asylum Seekers Centre said would be a good idea, they knew it was safe and they knew it was a good thing to do. They also understood, which was really wonderful, that it was actually about them. It's not about some kind of category. In fact, someone said to me, I want to be drawn as myself, and that is really what it's all about. So, because they're actually posing for me live, and in that little film that you can see when you glance around the corner there, you can see people sitting for me, and because they're actually sitting there, they can't do this or anything too dramatic. They've got to do something that's comfortable enough to sit for 2 to 3 hours. So there's a small range of poses that we could come up with, but I thought of a few variations. Sometimes people would get naturally into something, but it was very much, as all of it was a dialogue between me and the person who sat for me. People chose what they wanted to wear, and it was very important and very moving. So there are a lot of people, there's too many stories to tell you, but I'll just tell you a couple, and if you read the stories, you will get more of it. But people like this man, Hikmat, who's over there, was a very successful businessman in his home country, came here with nothing. He's now driving a taxi, and he's wanting to get that business empire back again. I think he will. He's very entrepreneurial. But he wanted to be drawn as he was before and as he hopes to be again. There's a very beautiful woman just over there wearing a pink headscarf. She wanted to wear her uniform, her nurse's uniform that she wore at home. She was a nurse. She was very proud to be a professional. And she wanted to be shown in the nurse's uniform, even though she's not doing that now. And she would like to do that again, but at this stage she's not. She's just trying to survive, really, I think. But she wanted to be shown like that as a professional. So she's wearing her nurse's uniform, and she's wearing this brightly coloured headscarf, which she would have worn in the hospital. But what I think is also really lovely is she's wearing a very silly little sparkly smiley face necklace you can see around her neck. And she said, when I'm in the hospital, people are upset and worried, and if I wear this silly little smiley face, it makes them laugh and just kind of lightens the atmosphere. And I always think, well, it just shows you what a terrible person she is. We really don't want her here. As if you wouldn't want someone like that looking after you. What a wonderful person. Anyway, so there's lots of things like that. There's also, what they've chose is interesting. So it's about how do they want to be portrayed. One of the things that you would have enjoyed and found very interesting as you walked around and had a little look is the beautiful text panels which were written by Tammy Bernstock. Tammy met each person, interviewed them, and then carefully wrote their words, wrote a short piece, so they're all written in a similar format, but allowing, obviously, different types of people to do it in different ways. And then she would send it to them and say, is this how you'd want to be presented? Is this what you want? And some people would say, I'd rather you left that, or I'd like you to also add whatever. So in other words, it's very much about what they want. There was, also someone who said, I've never been asked anything about me as a person. So they all got it. And I think it's very moving, and I think that when you walk in here, you feel like you're being introduced to a lot of interesting people, and it feels like quite a positive experience, which is what I wanted. I don't want to talk for too long, but I'll just tell you a little bit more, because it was an incredible, experience to have had. So these people are living legally in the community, waiting for their applications for residency. Some have got residency, and some have already moved on, and they're now out in the community doing, great things, whatever. But one particular day, I had someone in the morning who was in a really terrible state, was very, very worried about someone back home, and was actually in tears and shaking, and it was very difficult. But I made sure that I did not depict them like that. I didn't want anyone to look, I'm not going to make them look silly smiley if they're not, but I don't want anyone to I want people to be looking at their best, so it's a forward sort of thing. There are some people looking pensive, it's okay, but not looking sad or in the state that this person was in. But that day, after kind of coping with that, in the afternoon, I had what was probably the most hysterically happy person I've ever met, and she'd just got residency, and she was, even though there are terrible things about never seeing the family. I mean, it's hard for me to understand about never seeing the family again, probably, and all sorts of terrible things. The fact that she was safe and that she could stay here, the rapturous joy on her face was incredible, and she could smile non-stop for 2 or 3 hours. And any of you know, you're sort of smiling politely. It hurts when it's not real, but when it's real, you can do it. So anyway, so it was fantastic to meet all these people, and they were all very, very pleased with it. I just hope that in some way this exhibition goes to readdressing the fact that so many asylum seekers are dehumanised, and can try to, in some way, bring back the humanity that should be there, and remind everybody that asylum seekers are people like us, people who could be us. Thank you.
What a privilege it is for me, as a Sister of Charity, to be here this afternoon on this very special occasion. As congregational leader, I represent all Sisters of Charity, and I bring each one, those both very close and those afar, here this afternoon to this moment. It fills us with joy and gratitude to see this wonderful Providence house now a reality. Mary Aikenhead would be so pleased to see her congregation, founded in Ireland 200 years ago, this year, carrying on the charism of service of the poor in this new millennium. The Sisters of Charity of Australia, as Richard said, we celebrated our 175 years on December the 31st, 2013. And at our chapter in September 2014, the Sisters endorsed our continuing to live courageously and creatively our fourth vow, service of the poor, actively engaging in advocacy, action and prayer for people in need. and linking and networking with others in our quest for justice, peace, and integrity of creation. I was inspired by the acknowledgement given to the Sisters of Charity and the Foundation by your then patron, Mari Bashir, who was Governor of New South Wales at the time of our 175 years celebration. Mari Bashir said, "The Foundation's Asylum Seeker Housing Project is a legacy project befitting the Sisters of Charity of Australia on the 175th anniversary of their arrival. I am indeed delighted to see the mission of the Sisters of Charity of Australia being implemented through the innovative and compassionate work of the Foundation." So we ask God's blessing on all who come to this place, especially those seeking our compassionate care. May God bless all who work here, those caring directly with families, and those behind the scenes who will administer and organise. May we all be one, and may Mary Aikenhead watch over all of us, as together we keep the charism of the Sisters of Charity alive and active. May the love of Christ continue to impel us. On behalf of all Sisters of Charity, we say a very sincere thank you.
So let us officially open Providence House.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Absolutely wonderful. And the keys. Many keys. Richard, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been fantastic.